Welcome to this April 11th, 2026 edition of The Truth. I'm John Gordon. Thank you for joining us on Moving Day. And for those of you who are not golfers, it's the day that the field tries to move in onto the top 10 leaderboard and hopefully get into those last 2 or 3 pairings at the top of the leaderboard. And of course, our national sporting event of choice, the Masters Golf Tournament in Augusta, Georgia. Well, we don't interfere with your enjoyment of that because we're on from 12 to 2, and then you can join the Masters at 3 p.m. on CBS. And it really is a thrilling golf tournament every year. It never disappoints. And I've been really enjoying watching it, and I'm sure you have as well. Well, we've got a lot to cover today on The Truth. First of all, our studio is brought to you by Bone Frog Coffee. And we'll tell you all about that if you're not already familiar with it during the course of the show. But they sponsor our new studio here in West Palm Beach. And of course, the show, as always, is brought to you by Perfect Circle Renewable Energy, a restaurant services company located right there in good old Atlanta, Georgia, my former hometown. All right, well, we're going to talk to you today about the war in Iran. As we have said from the outset, it's far easier to start the war than to end it, as President Trump is finding out the hard way. Why is that true? Because you're dealing with a bunch of thugs and pathological liars, and their word means nothing. And so there is supposed to be a ceasefire, but Israel is bombing Lebanon, and Netanyahu claims that Lebanon was not part of the ceasefire. John Kerry, the guy who keeps coming back like a bad penny, adds his 2 cents this week. Now I'm going to show you the reasons for why we are in a skirmish, in a battle with Iran, and why we're joined by Israel in just a few minutes on the broadcast. The California high-speed rail that never happened. Well, they've opened a little section of it, about a third of it. It was supposed to cost $20 billion for the whole rail system connecting LA, San Francisco, and Sacramento. But now they are on the verge of opening a third of it. The verge? Well, that might be a little exaggerated because they were supposed to deliver it in 2020 for $20 billion. Now they're going to deliver a third of it in 2033 for $120 billion. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry, I think I misstated it. $30 billion was supposed to be the price tag for the whole rail, high-speed rail from Los Angeles to San Francisco. And then Florida's own Rick Scott has some choice words for Hakeem Jeffries. I think Senator Scott said what is on the top of everybody's mind. So also today we've got Tracy Byrnes as our guest today. He is an author, a financial analyst, and TV personality. He's authored a new book called Deduct Everything, perfect timing, hundreds of tax tips, legal write-offs, credits, and loopholes. And Tracy, that's not a he, is it, Anthony? That's Ms. Tracy Byrnes. I misspoke that too. I better get another cup of coffee, even though it's getting late in the day. Robert Bortons will also be with us. He's an author, educator, and CEO of Classical Conversations. We talked to Robert about government overreach, homeschooling, and the weaponization of wokeism in our public schools and why many people are turning to homeschooling. It's a great conversation. His book, How Karl Marx Won the Battle for America Education and How We Can Win It Back. So welcome to The Truth. And we've got a good show for you today. We're going to cover a lot of interesting topics. We'll lead off today with a look at Trump and the battle that he is having a difficult time winning. And a lot of it just gets down to the Iranians not being trustworthy. They say they want peace, and then they do the opposite. Here's President Trump talking about the Straits of Hormuz.
Our Vice President, J.D. Vance, and other top U.S. negotiators are heading to Pakistan today ahead of those high-stakes peace talks with Iran.
Meanwhile, President Trump says he is optimistic about working out a deal. Trey Yanks is live in Tel Aviv with the details. Good morning, Trey.
Yeah, Lawrence, good morning. High-stakes talks are scheduled this weekend in Islamabad, Pakistan, aimed at creating an agreement to end the war. With the temporary ceasefire in place, international focus remains on the Strait of Hormuz. Overnight, President Trump took to Truth Social to say, quote, Iran is doing a very poor job, dishonorable, some would say, of allowing oil to go through the Strait of Hormuz. That is not the agreement we have. With just 8 vessels reportedly passing through the strait in the first 48 hours of the ceasefire, a statement was released via state media from Iran's new supreme leader saying, quote, and certainly we are entering a new era with management of the Strait of Hormuz. We did not and do not seek war, but we will not give up our rightful rights in any way. And for this, we consider all the fronts of resistance as one. The region is waiting to see the outcome of the talks in Pakistan as Iranian officials and U.S. officials appear to be discussing a different set of terms. Iraq's foreign minister spoke this week about the talks.
We discussed the upcoming negotiation process in Pakistan, and we support and encourage this process. And we hope that the negotiation process will achieve its goals, which are peace and security in the region.
One issue that appears to be a sticking point is whether or not Israel will be able to strike Hezbollah, Iran's largest proxy based in Lebanon. Overnight, Israel struck launching positions in southern Lebanon, and shortly after, Hezbollah launched a rocket that triggered sirens in Tel Aviv.
I want to tell you, there is no ceasefire in Lebanon. We continue to strike Hezbollah with force, and we will not stop until we restore your security. Our great achievements, both in Iran and against the axis of evil, have brought about a historic change in Israel's status in the region.
Well, there you have it. I mean, do we have a ceasefire or don't we? Israel's obviously continuing to fire on Lebanon, and Iran has not really come close to fully opening the Straits of Hormuz. So it is a wait-and-see proposition at this point. I tell you, my hat is off to J.D. Vance. You know, we took out 2, if not 3 levels of Iran's leadership. I do worry about retaliatory action. I hope that Vice President Vance is safe when he goes to negotiate the peace accord. But he is actually going into the lion's den, in my opinion. President Trump expressed some reservations about sending JD to Pakistan because of safety concerns, yet he does not seem to have trepidation about sending his own son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and his good friend, who together, Wyckoff, who they have together worked on a peace accord with Iran, and as you know, they both worked together for peace in the Middle East, or especially Jared Kushner at the end of Trump 1.0. But I think they will be safe. I don't think that President Trump would have sent any of them to Pakistan to engage in peace talks if they did not have a solid plan for their safety. But it is a very tense situation, in my opinion. I've said from the outset that I didn't think that this war was going to be over with in as short a period of time as President Trump told us it would be. And that is because I've lived a long time. I've lived through Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, and a number of other lesser skirmishes. And we always hope that we're going to get in and get out, but very seldom does that turn out to be the case, because we underestimate the passion for individual sovereign countries to push back against U.S. intervention. But if we were ever justified, you would have to say we were, or certainly are, in Iran. And I'm going to put up for you in just a moment why I say that. But first, let's listen to this loser, John Kerry. I don't think he's ever had a real job. I think he's only had government jobs, and I'm pretty sure he lives a pretty cush life based on who he married. But, you know, he was Secretary of State under Obama, and it was those two that lifted the sanctions against Iran and freed up $150 to $200 billion, which allowed them to continue to enrich uranium and work towards their nuclear weapon acquisition, which they have clearly been working on for decades. And until President Trump went in, they were really close. They were really close. And I've heard from too many of our leaders to not believe that. And they got uranium enriched to 60%, and they were less than a month away from enriching it to 90%, which is the magic number to have a nuclear weapon. So I think President Trump did the right thing. I think he was courageous about it. I was like, well, couldn't he just waited until after the midterms? But that would have been playing right into Iran's hand, because by then they would have had a nuclear weapon, and it would have been very, very much more difficult to defend against. So kudos to President Trump for doing what he did. Now here's that brainiac, or at least he thinks so, John Kerry.
He wanted us to strike. He came to President Obama. He made a presentation to ask to strike. President Obama refused. President Biden refused. President Bush refused. The only president who has agreed to this, obviously, is President Trump. And it's really interesting. I read that article. It was a very good one. I mean, it seemed like good reporting. And they said that he went around the room and asked everybody their opinions, obviously. Prime Minister Netanyahu made a basically 4-point pitch saying that, you know, they could kill the leadership, they could incite a change of regime, et cetera. They would destroy the military, et cetera. Well, they've obviously hurt the military enormously. They have probably sunk, I mean, most of the Navy is gone. Yeah, our guys are good. And let me be clear about this. You know, those of us who are, you know, opposed to this war starting the way that it did and starting at all, don't have a doubt about the strength of the American military and our capacity to be able to do absolutely remarkable things, and I am in awe of them. But the fact is that there was no imminent threat. There just wasn't an imminent threat.
Well, nobody agrees with John Kerry on the inside of the administration or leaders of Congress who know what the score is. And I think that Kerry showed his ineptitude when he was Obama's Secretary of State. When they lifted the sanctions, they provided funding for Iran to continue their arms buildup and their development of a nuclear warhead. And he says there's no imminent threat. Well, I don't know. The fact of the matter is, I do not know. But here's what I do know. And I don't have, if I read you the whole list, we wouldn't have time to finish our broadcast. But this is 2 pages of Iran's sponsoring or direct terrorist initiatives that involved Americans and America's interest as well as our allies. Let's start with November 1979, when Iranian students, backed by the Iranian regime, seized the United States Embassy in Tehran and took 66 American hostages and kept them hostage for 444 days. I mean, to me, that's provocation enough. Do I really need to read the next 2 pages? April of 1983, Islamic jihadist, an Iranian-backed terrorist group, carried out a suicide bombing at the United States Embassy in Beirut, killing 17 Americans. That was an horrendous event. October of 83, Hezbollah terrorists killed 241 U.S. military personnel, including 220 U.S. Marines and 21 other service personnel in a truck bombing at a Marine compound in Beirut. March of 84, Iran-backed Islamic Jihad terrorists kidnapping CIA station chief William Buckley on his way to work in Beirut, ultimately killing him the following year. I mean, this list, it just goes on and on and on. Let's skip to the bottom of the page. May of 96, Iran-backed terrorists killed an American-Israeli dual citizen and wounded another American citizen in the West Bank. Let's go to, and there are a lot more in that decade, but let's skip to July 2020, and Iran-backed Hamas terrorists killed 5 Americans in bombing a Hebrew university in Jerusalem. And you wonder why the Israelis don't like Iran. And not to mention the fact that Iran wants to annihilate Israel and wipe them off the face of the earth. That's why there was an imminent threat to get rid of the enriched uranium. August of 23, an Iranian-backed Hamas terrorist blew up a bus in Jerusalem, killing 5 Americans and wounding 1 other American. Let's go down to 2014. Let's roll it forward. Iran-backed Hamas terrorists killed 2 American citizens serving in the IDF. December of 2019, Iran-backed Kataib Hezbollah terrorists killed an American civilian contractor and wounded several U.S. service members in a rocket attack at K-1 Air Force Base in Kirkuk, Iraq. Jiminy Christmas. In February of 2021, an Iran-backed militia fired a rocket at coalition forces in Erbil, Iraq, wounding a U.S. service member and 4 U.S. civilian contractors. In September of 22, an Iranian rocket attack killed an American citizen in Iraqi Kurdistan. October 20, and I'm skipping down the list. I'm giving you a small subset of the 2 pages that I've got here. In December of 2023, Iranian-backed militia wounded 3 U.S. service members in an attack at Erbil Air Force Base in Iraq. January of 24, Kataib Hezbollah terrorists killed 3 U.S. service members and wounded more than 40 others in a drone attack against Tower 22 military base in Jordan. Between October 23 and November 24, Iranians and proxies conducted more than 180 attacks against U.S. forces in the Middle East, wounding more than 180 U.S. service members and killing 3 servicemen or women. November of 2024, an Iranian national and IRGC asset was charged for plotting to assassinate President Trump. June 2025, Iranian-backed militia attacked at least 3 U.S. bases in Syria and 2 U.S. bases in Iraq. Mr. Kerry, Brainiac. No imminent threat? You think this war was a mistake? You think President Trump has some sort of ulterior motive? How about the 2 pages of terrorist attacks dating over 40 years, dating back to 1979, and taking 66 U.S. diplomats hostage? How bad does it have to get before you build a spine and say enough? And since the day that President Trump started bombing in Iran, I have supported him, and I have supported him consistently on this radio program and podcast, and I will continue to do so. And you know what? He had the courage where all those other people failed. He said, only President Trump would do it. Obama didn't do it. Bush didn't do it. Clinton didn't do it. Biden didn't do it. No kidding, you dumbass. You spineless dumbass. That's what you are. John Kerry, it's time for you to exit the stage. Just get off the national platform, and nobody will have him except MSNBC. That's where that interview took place, and they allow him to spew this garbage. It makes you nauseous, and they're killing our servicemen and women, and you're saying that there's not provocation for the war? This, ladies and gentlemen, is why I have developed the Gordon graphic on how our country is under attack. And right here, line 2 of the internal threats is the deep state. And that John Kerry interview is proof positive of the deep state at work inside our borders. I don't know why these people are not charged with crimes, because they're certainly not patriotic. They certainly don't put forth American interest. They put forth their petty politics interest. Ooh, let's take a break for a second. I'm getting wound up. Today's studio sponsor is Bone Frog Coffee. You know that. And if you're like me and you need a little extra bump during the middle of the day, just a little perfect kick without the jitters, grab Bone Frog Coffee. It's veteran-owned. Talk about patriotism. It's veteran-owned, founded by a retired Navy SEAL, Tim Cruikshank, as a tribute to his fallen teammates in the Naval Special Warfare community. Each bag tells a story and gives a peek behind the curtain of special ops. If you don't already know, the Bone Frog is a sacred symbol for SEAL teams that represents those men and women who've given their lives in combat and are reminders to us of the ultimate sacrifices for our freedom and the American way of life. Every bag, premium, small batch roasted from top shelf Arabica beans. How'd I do, Anthony? Whew, finally. Smooth, low acid, and no robusted junk. Think bold blends like Frogman Dark Roast or the classic Bone Frog Medium. Tastes like freedom in a cup. And here's the real deal. A chunk of every sale goes straight to helping SEAL vets and Gold Star families, aiming for over $500,000 donated. Coffee with a cause? Yeah, that's not a slogan. It's brotherhood brewed daily. Head to bonefrogcoffee.com. Snag yourself some K-Cups, whole bean, or merchandise. Use the promo code TRUTH. Start your day like I do. Fuel up, stay sharp, and remember, service before self. Support our veterans, and thank Bone Frog Coffee for sponsoring our studio. And check them out. Check them out right now at www.bonefrogcoffee.com. That's www.bonefrogcoffee.com. Bone Frog Coffee and the symbolism behind it, and standing with our fallen men and women of the U.S. different branches of service, particularly the special units, special forces. That's what patriotism looks like. It's not the garbage that people like John Kerry spew. Okay, speaking of garbage, look at the California high-speed rail. It was going to cost $30 billion, and it was going to be delivered by 2020. It didn't cost $30 billion. It's cost $128 billion. Where is Nick Shirley when we need him? Let's look at a current snapshot that was put together by CBS and 60 Minutes. Here you go.
The very model of modern engineering, it hums across the fruited plains at a top speed of 200 miles an hour. It's revolutionized travel. It's a source of national pride. In Morocco. Here in the U.S., high-speed rail looks like this, hardly passenger-ready. America's hopes for its first high-speed rail were kindled in 2008 when California voters approved a ballot measure for a train connecting Los Angeles to San Francisco in less than 3 hours. The estimated price tag, $33 billion. Completion date, 2020. It would cut pollution, revitalize local economies, clear gridlock. Status update. Today, the state's high-speed rail authority is preparing to lay its first tracks at roughly the same cost. Only slight course correction here. Instead of LA to San Francisco, it will run 1/3 of that distance, connecting, wait for it, the metropolis of Bakersfield and Merced, population 96,000. Oh, and when will it open? 2033, maybe.
I think that the California high-speed rail nightmare is the probably quintessential example of government waste and mismanagement.
You say this needs to stop.
Needs to stop.
Congressman Vince Fong, a Republican from Bakersfield, sits on the House Transportation Committee. He says that when California voters first approved high-speed rail, the promise and price tag were more marketing campaign than realistic projection.
We're now in 2026. There are no trains. There's no track laid. It's a complete bait and switch.
If I vote for a mansion in Malibu by next year and someone says, actually, you know what, in 5 years we're going to have a doghouse in Modesto, how do things go so off the rails?
The business plan that was put out in 2008 was very theoretical. This is what we think is going to happen, and it became very clear that they didn't have the specifics worked out.
So there's a really good reason that you should join us on Getter.com. If you are, then you can watch you can watch our clips, also on Rumble.com, YouTube Live, as well as Facebook Live. We come to you every Saturday on those platforms, as well as the John Frederick's Radio Network and CDM.press and their 13 digital platforms. But you can go there, and you can also on Getter, not only can you watch our clips and view our graphics, but you can also interact with us live, where we have several thousand people doing just that right now in this very moment. So come over to Getter, hit the live button and search for John Gordon Truth, or just look at the top of the page. It should come up, and consider joining the live stream. I think you'll like it. So right now on that live stream, we're showing a visual of where the train was supposed to go from, south of Los Angeles, starting in Anaheim, going all the way up into the interior of California in Bakersfield, and then going up to Madera, taking a hard left turn into San Francisco, or going straight ahead into Sacramento. Now the yellow is from Bakersfield to Merced, and that is the portion of the train that they're trying to finish now by 2033. They're only 10 years late, and they're only completing 1/3 of the train, which is really the train to nowhere, from nowhere, going nowhere. And they did not deliver on the promise to build the train into LA and into San Francisco and Sacramento. Now, include in that list the fact that there are have been vast water shortages in California. They did not refill many of the reservoirs. They did not refill many of the reservoirs that supplied the fire hydrants. So what did we get? We got crops that died on the vine because of a lack of water, and we got the Palisades fire that wiped out about, I think, over 2,000 homes. Or is it 2,000 or 20,000, Anthony? I think it's 2,000, isn't it? Yeah, do a quick fact check for me on that. But I understand that only 30 houses have been rebuilt. Oh, they were going to do it quick. They were going to remove all the debris and get everything ready to go. And my son lives in LA. I visit LA. It's a wasteland. It is a wasteland. 16,000 Jiminy Christmas houses or structures burned down. Now, what is really a pity is that this guy, Gavin Newsom, thinks that he's got a record that he can run on to become president of the United States. You must be kidding. water shortages, which were totally unnecessary and preventable, a Palisades fire that they couldn't fight because of lack of water, and a lack of preparedness with a mayor that was out of the country who said she was never going to leave her duty post, but she was out of town when the Palisades fire started. And Gavin Newsom, the only thing he did during the fire that I could tell was show up for photo ops. And now he's delivered a $133 billion train to nowhere. My God. Save us. Help us. I think J.D. Vance, who is over there right now in the Middle East, working to bring peace to that region, which we have not seen in my lifetime, versus Gavin Newsom, who rules for thee but not for me, not wearing a mask at the French Laundry in the wine country while everybody else is sheltered at home, required to wear masks when they went out. I think he would really, I'm not sure that Kamala Harris wouldn't be a better candidate than Gavin Newsom. But that's a good thing. That's a good thing. They have no bench. They have no depth. They have no competency. All they've got are false narratives, made up stuff, and just continue to spew their venom. Now, you say, prove it. Show me. Well, here's an example. You're in my favorite minority leader of the United States House of Representatives, none other than Hakeem Jeffries.
We're in active conversations with Republicans to secure an additional handful of our Republican colleagues, which is all we will need to join House Democrats in stopping this reckless war of choice.
Jeffries is an idiot. I mean, here's a country that wants to develop a nuclear weapon to kill Americans, and they've been killing Americans, and he wants to limit the president's authority. I want this president to do everything he can to protect my family, your family, all of us. So Jeffries is a complete idiot on this.
I couldn't have said it better myself. That was Senator Rick Scott from Florida. He just absolutely nailed it, and I'm so proud of him for having the courage to speak up. Look, here's Hakeem Jeffries describes as 2 pages of Iranian terrorist attacks and threats, not threats, but actual acts that were carried out that killed our citizens and servicemen and women. And not a few, I mean, hundreds, if not into the thousands. And I left out one in June of 1985. Hezbollah hijacked TWA Flight 847 on its way from Athens to Rome, torturing a U.S. Navy diver before shooting him at point-blank range in the head and tossing his body onto the Beirut airport tarmac. And Hakeem Jeffries calls it a war of choice. You're pathetic. Rick Scott called it. He's an idiot. And I think he's an unpatriotic idiot, okay? I think he is an unpatriotic idiot. And when are the American people en masse going to wake up and push back? This idiot said that the Department of Homeland Security was not open because of Donald Trump. Well, I guess you could say that because Trump has a big enough backbone to stand up to you and your leftist lunatic Democrats who don't want to fund ICE because they're doing what 77 million Americans told them to do, which is to deport illegal aliens in this country. When are the American people going to stand up en masse and say, out of here? They don't deserve to be in Congress. They don't deserve to be Americans, many of them. Ilhan Omar coming to this country from a foreign land, Somalia, and all she's done since she got here was bash America while going from a negative net worth to over $25 million in net worth. Follow the money. Where is the accountability? When are we going to hold these people accountable? The American people have to demand it. The American people have to demand accountability, and you do that by writing your representatives, speaking out on Facebook, on X, anywhere you can make your voice heard. Call Talk Radio, call The Truth, anytime you'd like to, or write me, johngordontruth@gmail.com. Speak up, speak out, make your voice heard. If enough people do it, we could get this country back on the right track. I think we're on the right track. We could keep it on the right track. That's what I'm worried about. And the midterms are right around the corner. And we got to be careful. If we get complacent and the American people don't show up for the midterm elections, we are in serious trouble. Because you'll have Hakeem Jeffries as the Speaker of the House, and you'll have the lunatic from New York back as the majority leader. That would be Schumer. Those are circumstances that we can ill afford. We cannot allow those people to reclaim power over our legislative institutions and stop Donald Trump's agendas, which they will most assuredly do. And they won't do it because they disagree with his policies. And they're not going to do it because they dislike him personally, although that's what they tell you. Oh, he's such a horrible, terrible person. He's been indicted 93 crimes, and they were shams. But they continue to spew the lies. And there are enough Americans, evidently, that will fall for it. And the Americans that don't fall for it have got to exercise not only their voices, but most importantly, that you show up in November to vote. That's what we have to be prepared to do. Put it on your calendar right now. Put November what day is it? The 4th or the 5th? I'm not sure. The 4th, I do believe. Anthony does believe. And put it on your calendar. Make plans right now. Vote early. If you're over 65, you can get an absentee ballot. If you're out of the country, you can get an absentee ballot. If you're in the military. Otherwise, show up. I'm 70. Oh, I was 73 yesterday. I'm 73 in a day today. Every day is a gift at my age. But I've got it on my calendar, and I am going to vote in person. All I have to do is fill out a piece of paper and mail it in. I can get an absentee ballot. But you know what? I care enough about our country. I cherish our freedom adequate to the point where I'm going to go to the poll and vote in person on election day. I might vote early. I don't know. It depends on where I am and what I'm doing and what my plans are. I might vote early. There's nothing wrong with that if it's legal in your state. But otherwise, I'm going to try and vote on election day otherwise. All right, so this is The Truth. I am John Gordon. We come to you on the John Fredericks Radio Network every Saturday and Sunday from noon to 2. And we also come to you on cdm.press. They're a newspaper company. They've got newspapers in Miami and Colorado and Atlanta and Northern Virginia. They also have 13 digital platforms. They carry our feed every Saturday and put it out across their network. So thank you to cdm.press for the relationship, and especially a shout out to John Fredericks, who's had the confidence to put us on his air for the last 3.5 years. And we're also on Getter and Rumble and YouTube Live and Facebook Live. Join us. I like Getter, frankly. And if you want to give me a belated birthday present, not that you're obligated to, or not that I kind of maybe planting a seed, maybe. I'm not really asking you to, but if you feel the urge, you could go to Getter, Rumble. One of those two would be preferable. Subscribe to our channel. It doesn't cost anything. You can also hit the bell for notifications, and you'll know when our next show or podcast is going to be put up, and you can get notification about who we're going to talk to and what we're going to talk about. And if you like us, don't be shy to hit the thumbs up button. And if you have friends or relatives or neighbors that you'd like to share any segments with, just hit the share button. We're growing thanks to you, and we really do need your help. We cannot grow without you. YouTube has throttled the hell out of us. Facebook canceled our page. X took our page down. We're back on X today, Anthony? Oh, Facebook. We're back up on Facebook. Yay! We had crawled all the way up to almost 12,000 subscribers on Facebook, and poof, our page disappeared. But we have a friend. He had a friend, and he got us back up on Facebook and our page restored. So thank you to all of you who played a hand in that. Now, if anybody knows anybody at X, and you could put in a good word for us, we'd like to get our X page back because we were almost up to 12,000 on X. They didn't give us a reason. Page just disappeared. So anyway, it's a tough go in this podcasting and radio biz, but we're determined. We're going to continue. My only regret since starting this show is I had knee replacement on Thursday. On Saturday, I fully intended to do the broadcast, and I woke up on Saturday morning and I felt so bad. It was all I could do to get out of the bed. And I had taken some pain medicine that made me really loopy. And I just said, I can't do it. I just cannot do it today. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the only week that I have missed in 3.5 years. And I feel a very strong commitment to each of you to do the broadcast, and we put a lot of work into it. Our goal is to make sure that you hear the truth. And that is our guiding light. And we don't, I love Trump, but I don't spare him when he messes up. He doesn't do it very often. And a couple of times I've jumped on his case and I regretted it because it turned out that he was right. But we do call balls and strikes, and we call them where we see them. Just like we've done today about that very charismatic, dynamic, brainiac, so accomplished John Kerry, who flies around on his wife's private plane while talking about reducing carbon in our atmosphere, and that tall, handsome, slick guy that's governor of California, and the lunatic idiot Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader of the House of Representatives. I hope I don't speak too boldly, but today's broadcast is brought to you by Perfect Circle Renewable Energy. They are a restaurant services company in Atlanta, Georgia. They have over 10% of all the restaurants in the metropolitan area. They pick up their waste vegetable oil. They refine it for biodiesel. Biodiesel burns cleaner. It's talking about what's good for our economy or in our environment. It burns cleaner. It has greater lubricity. The diesel engine was originally designed to run on peanut oil, no less. So waste vegetable oil is kind of back to the future. And they also clean vent hoods and service grease traps. They provide containers and containment, and they give good, clean, reliable service. So if you're tired of dirty, unreliable service and automated attendance, check PCRenergy.com out on the World Wide Web. Give them a phone call, ask them to come out and do a free assessment for you and your restaurant or your restaurant company, your commissary, whatever, and or your food truck. They service all the above. They've been around for now 20 years. PCRenergy.com. All right, our first interview today is Ms. Tracy Byrnes. She's written a book about paying less taxes. What a timely interview this will be. We talked about the One Big Beautiful Bill and its tax cuts and the tax accounts, or Trump tax accounts. The Trump accounts. They're for infants, newly born. You can donate. I'm not sure what the limit is. I think 1,000 or 2,000 to a newborn. I think it's under the age of 2 or 3, and it can grow tax-free. And unlike an IRA, when they become 18 years old, you can use that money and not have to pay taxes on it for education including tuition, room and board and books. And it's pretty liberal in terms, not liberal in terms of liberal versus conservative, liberal in terms of pretty generous in what you can use that money for if it is education or related expenses. Then Robert Bortons, he'll be on right after Ms. Byrnes. We talked to Robert about his new book, How Karl Marx Won the Battle for American Education. I told him I'm not willing to concede that yet. I'm just not willing to concede that they've won it. He says we got to win it back. I say we just stop them in their tracks and we start holding teachers and school boards responsible for the garbage that they try and impose on us and our children through these woke ideologies that we really don't want and that we're really not willing to pay for. But they just abuse us and they abuse our children by feeding them full of that garbage. That's what we're talking to Robert Bortons about in just a few minutes on The Truth. Stay tuned and have a good Masters weekend. It's that time of year again. Claim all your income and claim all your deductions. Now, I heard that tip from Tracy Byrnes, and she has written a book, Deduct Everything. Hundreds of tax tips, legal write-offs, credits, and loopholes. Boy, do I need your help, Tracy. Welcome to The Truth.
Thank you for having me.
That's our pleasure. So tell us about the book. How did you, what is your background? What brought you to write this book? And I'm seriously, I need to save money on taxes this year. It's going to be it was a good year, but it's a bad year, if you know what I'm saying.
Of course, and that's the problem, right? We make a lot of money, but we don't want to pay taxes on it. I think the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, while it's fabulous and was well-intentioned, it's very complicated. The tax code is getting more and more complicated. So, you know, the premise behind the book was to try to simplify it. So we wrote it in just tips. You could just hop to a chapter that pertains to you. It's by no means written to read cover to cover unless you have insomnia one night and you need some help. But it's more about highlighting what's available to you. That way you can either take it to your tax preparer and say, do I, you know, this feels like it's me. Do I qualify? Or when you sit down and use a tax preparation software, you go through those sections and you take your time and answer all the proper questions.
I want to just ask you, and this is probably one of the only people in America who have said this, but is the Big Beautiful Bill and the promises that it makes a lot to do about nothing? Let me tell you where I'm coming from. First off, no tax on tips.
Right.
How many servers are paying tax on tips to begin with? Does it just let them sleep better at night, maybe? But is it material in the big scope of things? Similarly, no tax on Social Security. Well, I don't think it applies to me. I don't know how many people it does apply to. But maybe you can tell us what the threshold is. But if you make over a certain amount, it doesn't apply to you, which is true with so many deductions.
Probably all of them. They probably all in some shape or form have an income limitation on them. The thing with the tax on tips, and it's almost frustrating to me how misleading it's been. You have to pay tax on your tips. In theory, to your point, I'm not sure how many people actually report them, but you report them and then you see if you qualify for the deduction. It's a $25,000 deduction. So it's not across the board. Your tips are tax-free from here on out. It's not it at all. Quite frankly, you should pay into the system because you pay Social Security and Medicare on those tips, which will help you down the line. So I think there's been a lot of misleading statements out there by the media in particular. And that was, again, part of the premise behind this. Let's clear this up for people.
Now, when you say you pay into Medicare, that is another source of puzzlement, bewilderment to me, because I thought that I'm 72. I'm still working. I'm still have payroll withholding, and I pay a lot of money in tax. I thought perhaps naively that all that money that I've been paying into Medicare, I've started working when I was 12. I don't know when Medicare came into existence. I think I started working before we had Medicare. But regardless, why am I still paying a monthly premium for medical insurance to Medicare?
That is a question for your president. I think I'm with you. I understand. I don't know why either. You've earned your time and you deserve a little help from the rest of us, but that's the way the system works right now. I'm with you.
Well, I thought it was actually my money. I thought that my Medicare was bought and paid for with my money. So when I became the tender age of 65, I guess, that 65. I could opt in and that I would no longer have to pay for Medicare. But my wife and I are both paying. I was paying $800 a month, and then that's a lot of money. And then I joined Humana and their PPO, and my premium dropped to $400 a month. But now I've got copays and deductibles and so forth. I don't know. I spent a week with an insurance man last night. I think, what was his name? Fields. What was the comedian's name in the 20s? You're much too young to remember. I can't. What was his name, Anthony? He used to hold his cigar and yeah, it's all like children. Barbecued. W.C. Fields, thank you.
Yeah. W.C. Fields.
Yeah, not Groucho Marx. He smoked a cigar.
No,
also,
I was going to say Groucho Marx, but
yeah, but it was W.C. Fields. He said, "Yes, I spent a week with an insurance man at my house last night." Sorry for the insurance salesman in our audience. I guess the radio went click. But why? I mean, inquiring minds need to know. I mean, why am I paying insurance premiums? You don't know. I don't know.
I don't know. And I think there's a lot of questions surrounding all the things we pay into. And as I've said previously, I think the tax code has become a big book of favors. And there's a lot of people paying a lot of things that they just don't understand why they're paying it. And so simplifying the tax code would be a real gift to the American people. But we're a long way off from that.
It seems to me that nobody gets the shaft except for the American people. And then we get it at every freaking turn. And, I think Malcolm Ford Jr. was so right. If we paid a fair tax, it would solve every problem. We wouldn't have to worry about loopholes. We wouldn't have to worry about special interests. We wouldn't have to worry about some people getting favors. It would set the right policy for our country. And for those that don't know, I mean, we would pay basically like a VAT, a value-added tax like they do in Europe, just like a sales tax here, except it would be a bigger number. But it would discourage consumption. Oh, maybe that's why it won't fly. And it would encourage savings. And the IRS would be extinct. We would save all those 100,000 government workers or more, and the amount of money that it takes to keep the IRS in business, and we'd get rid of those volumes after volumes after volumes of tax code. It just makes so much sense to me. Is it something that will just never happen?
Well, and Steve Forbes wanted a flat tax for a lot of years too. So I think what both of them would do is take away the piece of the code now that I think lower and middle income people families always feel like the rich are getting away with something that they're not, that the rich can afford tax attorneys and very expensive accountants to figure out all the loopholes so that they save more money than lower and middle income families. And I think it would take that away. Once you understand what you're paying and why you're paying it, maybe people will be more inclined to pay it, as opposed to the Wesley Snipes of the world that felt it wasn't their obligation to pay taxes. I think that it just makes things simpler, and simple is always better. But we're so far from that because the tax code is a book of favors that they give to each other when they're trying to pass laws and regulations, and they throw things in the tax code just to get things done. And sadly, it's become nothing but a stool height full of confusion.
Well, the flat tax or the fair tax, they would get rid of all the CPAs in the world too.
Well, there's that.
And I guess there would still be corporate tax. But if you listen to Elizabeth Warren, that's a meaningless number. Yeah, right. So give us your top 3, 4, 5 deductions. What should we be looking at?
Well, look, if you are in hospitality or an industry where you do collect tips, make sure you see if you qualify for this deduction. It's great. 25 grand is great. If you could save on that, why not? Same with overtime. That goes to all our firefighters, police officers, EMT workers, people that work very hard and work overtime. If you qualify for that overtime deduction of $12,500, you should take it, get it. The standard deduction this year is higher, so a lot of families are going to fall into that. So you're not even going to have to worry about itemizing your deductions. And then the last thing I would say is April 15th is 2 weeks from today. If you cannot get your tax return done in time, please file an extension. It's Form 4868. File it. The IRS just wants to hear from you. Just make sure you get that in before midnight on the 15th, and then you'll have till October 15th to file your return. If you owe money, though, the bill is due by midnight on April 15th, regardless of whether your return is ready.
Yeah, and if you don't pay, then you got to start paying interest on the money that you eventually will have to pay.
Right. So you don't want to pay interest and failure to file penalties as well. So at least file the 4868.
Okay. Now, how do you buy a new car for up to 40 grand and be able to write it off immediately?
You don't. It's interest. There's a $10,000 interest deduction, which is great. You may or may not qualify for it. Depends again on your income level. A car has to be brand new in the United States. It cannot be a used vehicle. A lot of people think that they were going to, I think this one actually was one of the most misleading. So many people walked into their tax preparer's office this year thinking they were getting a $10,000 break and they don't qualify. So watch the income limits on this thing, but it is on the interest, not the loan. And again, there are income limitations.
So give us some more. Get the government to help you pay your energy bill. That would be a good one. How does that work?
There are definitely write-offs for solar and things like that in there. I would say when you flip through this book or go through an online tax preparation software, answer every single question, because you never know what you're going to qualify for. I know it's drudgery, and I really do encourage people to try to prepare their own tax returns, because at least once in your life, you get a sense of the fact that this is one big mathematical equation. There's money in, money out. But when you walk through these software programs, they ask you all the questions, and it would jigger your memory into things that you may or may not qualify for.
All right. And you say there's a better way to save for college?
100% use a 529 plan if you can. If you have a little one, anybody has grandchildren or babies out there, see if you qualify for those Trump accounts. That's free money. The government's giving you money. Michael Dell is adding to it. It's not life-changing on any stretch, but it's something that cannot be used for college. Let's be clear, that is retirement savings. But still, if you have little ones, use it. If you have kids that are little, that are going to college someday, really think about using a 529 plan.
So tell us what the 529 plan is.
It's really great, actually. And it's like one of the things that grandparents can do for their grandkids without writing checks and handing it over. You can fund this. You can front load it up to 5 years if you wanted to as well. And then this money just grows tax-free for your college-bound grandchild, daughter, son, whatever. And when they pull the money out, when it's time to go to school, there's no tax on it as long as they use it for tuition, room and board. They buy laptops, things like that. And the other thing, too, is you can use it for private institutions, K through 12. So if you send your child or grandchild to Catholic or private school, you can use this money that's growing tax-free, which is a beautiful thing. You can use it to pay all those tuitions. It's a lovely gift.
What's the limit per year?
I think it's 60 grand this year.
Wow. So you're saying that I could give each of my grandchildren $60,000, and that would not count against the unified credit or the tax.
The gift tax?
The gift tax?
It might. Actually, it might.
Okay.
But it's okay. That's still good.
But it could then be used later in their life to pay their educational expense.
Right.
And
right.
if we invested in Tesla and the autonomous car and Optimus get delivered, then no telling they could go to medical school and pay for the residency.
Yeah.
Tax free.
Well, I mean, so why not, right? So if grandma and grandpa every year, because it's $18,000 a year now. So if grandma and grandpa every year put $36,000 in together, look at what you're doing for your grandchild. I think it's beautiful.
But
they have to go to school. The other thing that's really cool about these things is they're fungible. So if little Johnny decides he doesn't want to go to medical college, let's say, but little Laura does, you can give it all to her. You can just swap it over in her name and send it over to her, as long as they're siblings. Siblings, parents. If mom wants to go back to school in the family, you can use it fungibly.
Okay.
I had 3 for my kids, and I ended up using them all around until we finished them.
That is great to know. And then the Trump accounts, you get to put in what?
Up to you get 1,000 from the government. 5. You get 1,000 from the government. You can put another 5. It sits there. It has to be, in theory, for retirement for the child. So you cannot use this for college.
Is that $5K per child or $5K per anybody that wants to give to the child? Like, could my wife give 5? I could give 5. Somebody else could give 5. All of our listeners could give 5.
I wish.
I have some rich grandchildren. So it's just 5,000 one time per child.
I might go have another child because of that. No, it's yes, parents, grandparents can contribute. It's a one-time 5,000 per year.
But the government's going to kick in a grand, and Michael Dell will kick in and
Michael Dell's kicking in extra money too. I don't know. It's not a full $1,000 from Michael Dell, but he's kicking in stuff too.
Millions of dollars that he has donated for that. And that is such a beautiful concept. And for retirement, it's not like a traditional IRA. You're not going to get taxed on it when you take the money out when you're 65, or is that to be determined based on who gets into power?
The idea. That's the idea, that as long as you wait, the child will get the money tax-free. That's the idea. Now, you and I both know it's a long way off from babies born today and their retirement age at 75. So anything could change. The idea being this will not be taxed when they need it in retirement.
Well, that is a beautiful thing, and I guarantee you that $6,000 or $7,000 can multiply really quick. Now, you didn't say it's $5,000 a year, did you?
No, 5,000
one time.
One time.
Yeah, I think that's right. Well, that is a really good device to know about. Is there a time limit on it? Do you have to do it before the child achieves a certain age?
No, I don't. You know what? I don't know. Actually, that's a great question. What I do know, though, is that it's kids born today and maybe over the course of the next 18 months. So people that are thinking about having babies, get going.
Yeah. All right. And then finally, you say the most overlooked tax deduction, even one that many accountants don't even know about. What would that one be?
Well, I think there's so many of them because the problem is, I think for a lot of people, is that they don't prepare all the things. I think self-employed people overlook so many things. You qualify for so much. I have said this before, that if you work from home and you actually have a home office, you should take the deduction. Make sure you're not sharing your home office with your kids' playroom and you're not working out of the dining room. But if you have a home office, take the deduction. The standard deduction this year has gone higher, so a lot of people will qualify for that. And that's why they're expecting people to see more money, more of a refund. I will also say, lastly, that the goal is not to get money back. The goal is to be net zero. You don't want the government to have your money all year long. So those of you out there that are, want and are expecting big refunds, rethink that. Maybe you're having too much money withheld. Maybe you're overpaying in estimates. Rethink that, because the government...
Do they pay you back with interest?
No.
A little bit of hypocrisy going on there, I would say.
And meanwhile, they're earning interest on your money, right? So why are we giving it to them?
So the home mortgage deduction is still in play?
Mm-hmm. And the state and local tax deduction is back as well. And that's really important for people in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, California. Those high tax states, It's very important for them. It's super helpful, especially for our middle income families. Again, though, if you make too much money, you're not going to really qualify for it because there are income limitations on everything. But for those that qualify, it could be up to 40 grand, which is amazing.
Wow. And what do you mean for those who qualify? I mean, I got a mortgage.
If you make too much money.
Oh.
No, but if you make too much money, again, yeah, you don't qualify.
Well, why is Elizabeth Warren so concerned about the rich not paying their fair share? Sounds like the tax code's built for everybody but the rich.
I have to tell you, I don't think you're wrong, and I don't know what she's talking about either, because wealthy people get gypped out of everything, especially wealthy people that don't have write-offs. They get gypped out of everything.
All right, so the book is Deduct Everything. The author is Tracy Byrnes, and she's an MBA and a CDFA. Wow, one smart lady. I bet the cost of the book is deductible. Yes.
For tax preparation purposes, it might be, right?
I would think so. It's business education. Thank you, Tracy. Appreciate you coming on. Where can people keep up with you?
So I'm at Tracy Byrnes on LinkedIn. The website is Tracy Byrnes Wealth. Call, reach out anytime, any questions. Happy to help.
Thank you, Tracy. Very timely information for this very happy time of the year known as tax season. Happy if you get a refund, but Tracy says that's not necessarily a good thing. With that, we'll leave it with you and have a great rest of your weekend.
Thank you. You too.
There's a trend in America to homeschool your children. I wonder why that is. Robert Bortons is an author. He's written Woke and Weaponized: How Karl Marx Won the Battle for American Education. That's kind of a sad way to introduce you, Robert. What's going on?
Hey, John. Yeah, we, of course, we saw an elected socialist in New York City's the mayor up there, and he said we need to throw off rugged individualism and embrace the warmth of collectivism. And we see that, Gen Z and just our nation's $39 trillion in debt, and people can't read, they can't do math, they don't know their geography, and I wanted to figure out why that was and why homeschoolers seem to be performing so well. So Alex Newman and I decided to go do a research. How did our public schools get started in America? Are they being successful, or are they failing our parents? And why is homeschooling growing so much?
So did you collaborate on this book with Alex?
Yep. Yeah, Alex, he's an investigative journalist. And
no, he's been on our show a couple of times. We like Alex. He's great.
Yeah, he's a dear friend of mine. And so, you can't solve a problem. Most people understand our education system in America is not working, but you can't solve a problem if you don't know the root cause. And so we wanted to go look at the research and figure out what the root cause was. And we found out that it was Marxist from the beginning, and the intent of the founders of the public school system, people like John Dewey, the Ford Foundation, the Carnegie Foundation, was to use our public schools and weaponize it against the citizens to create good socialists so that the United States could be successfully merged with the USSR. And, they did that through taking over the teachers' colleges and just basically providing a woke and weaponized education system inside the United States, while the rest of us were thinking that it was, helping us with our values, and it's not. And now we see the fruit of that all around us.
You would think these people were pretty smart, but why do they insist on pushing an ideology and worse, a form of government that has never demonstrably worked? And we're finding that out in real time in New York City right now, as hundreds of billionaires have left the state because they don't want to be taxed to death. And so they just pack their bags and they leave. And then the radical liberals blame them for their condition because their tax base is evaporating. It is such a circular type phenomenon, more like a snowball full of rocks traveling downhill, collecting both speed and size. Why can't they see that?
Well, they believe that private property is really the root of all evil. And a guy that we exposed back in 1826 during the time of Marx, Robert Owen, He said that he wanted to start a public school system so he could rid the trinity of evil from America. And he called the trinity of evil religion, family, and private property. And so they believe that every single war, would be stopped, that famine would be stopped if we would just tax the billionaires and redistribute the wealth, and that we could have some sort of socialist utopia here on Earth. And so that's their worldview. That's why they say, when you bring up 100 million people have been killed because of this worldview, many by their own government, that it's just because we didn't get the right people in place.
They've never gotten the right people in place. It just doesn't flat out work. Even Russia has moved to a more capitalist form of a society. There are more oligarchs in Russia and really significant wealthy individuals that have done it through the old-fashioned way of inventing, marketing, selling, and it works.
Yeah, it works. It works for each individual. It creates human flourishing. It gives people a purpose. It gives them an opportunity to make a better life for themselves. But they really want to control society. They would rather rule over the rubble than to have a free society where people are making decisions that are contrary to their worldview. And so they want people on the economic hamster wheel. They want people who are buying their pills, that are watching their television shows, that are mindlessly entertained. And how do you do that? Well, you have to strip people of their identity. You have to strip them of their family's last name so that they're, more associated with, if they're an Apple or Android person, than, maybe what their great grandfathers did. And so you have to divide the children away from the parents as early as possible to create these consumer mindsets, because they see that, once you're kind of on this consumer hamster wheel, you need more and more and more to satisfy yourself, and then you can easily control society and rule over it. And so, ultimately, that's what we've seen with Hollywood. That's what we've seen with our public education system. And, we have maybe a temporary reprieve with the current government, elected federal government, but we see all around us how people are embracing, like in New York City and California and Seattle. I know Minnesota is trying to do a wealth tax, which is just absolutely insane. But it's the creed of greed, and that's absolutely what they've, bought into.
So the three tenets were, they want to do away with religion, private property, and what was the third?
And marriage, because they knew that if you had family ties, that there would be loyalty there. So ultimately, they want the state to replace the parents, and they do that by separating kids from their family as early as possible. Private property, our taxes are sky high here in the United States now. I mean, people are paying 40, 50% of what they earn to some sort of state entity. And then religion, I think Byrnes shows less than 6% of Americans now have a biblical worldview, and Gen Z's down to 2%. That may have bottomed out. We see some great things in the statistics of more and more young men and people going back to church because they see this ideology is unfulfilling when you just look to consumerism to fill your needs instead of a spiritual force that created you. But yeah, it's a sad state that we find ourselves in, and that's why, even though we feel like we defeated communism when the wall fell, and during the world wars, they were secretly infiltrating the United States, not through military might, but through Hollywood and through our education system, and they've used that to create good little collectivists here in the United States that will, abandon their family. Right? They'll complain using Twitter and their Apple phone about capitalism while experiencing all the benefits of it. And so that's ultimately their goal, is to be able to control society and rule it. And yeah, that's why it's so important for families to take their sovereignty back, to be in control of their child's education, and to fight back against the collectivist ideology that's infiltrated our country.
So who are these people? I heard you say the Carnegies.
Yeah, so like people like the Carnegie Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, and then the Ford Foundation were kind of the three big ones. And they were, back in the 1950s, weaponizing their grant-making powers in the federal government, just like USAID. They were pulling the USAID playbook in the 1950s. You can read about it in the Reese report. Since then, they've recruited people like Bill Gates, the Walton Foundation, George Soros, groups like that who want to control society. And you can see exactly what they were doing versus in COVID. I mean, COVID really exposed what their game plan was and how much they had, basically made it so everyone would do whatever Big Brother told them to do. They would say, how high? Oh, you want us to go 6 feet away? And all that's from that conditioning of believing the government instead of believing what's in front of your own eyes.
So I do sense that we are under attack from so many different directions. I used to think it was one centralized place or enemy, but now, regrettably, it is a diverse segment and cross-section of entities. So I decided to try and graphically illustrate it, and I put this little diagram together, which is the United States, and I'll hold it up there so you can see it.
Yep.
But you can see that we've got foreign enemies: Russia, China. Mexico's on a dotted line. Canada is on a dotted line. They're our allies, but at times they're not very sympathetic to what we feel that how we feel they should behave. The European Union is a constant pain in our side because we have done so much for them. They act like spoiled children to me, that they just want more and more from us, but they don't want to give. And then there's Iran. That's clearly a solid line. And Cuba down there is kind of a squiggly line. We really don't know. It doesn't have any real power, so it's not like the rest, but maybe Cuba is going to come over to us. But the more disturbing thing to me are the inside influences that you see there that seem to be working against us. We suspect that there are sleeper cells from our enemies embedded in the United States, like from China and from the Middle East.
Sure.
And then there's the deep state, which is a real concern. And then you've got special interests, big pharma, big tech, big ag, just go down the list. Then we've got Antifa to deal with, and the intel community, the FBI and the CIA. And then we've got a lot of crime in our country still, and the mob, and their influence cannot be underestimated. What do you think of my graphic?
No, I think that's absolutely true. I mean, you have, right, Margaret Thatcher said the problem with socialism is you eventually run out of other people's money, and Europe has clearly run out of their own money, and so now they're coming to the United States to steal ours. And you've got a lot of big pharmas run by crony capitalists. They don't care about the common man. They just want to enrich their pockets so they can fly to Epstein's Island and do whatever they want to do there. And so we don't have a healthcare system. We have a sickness system, and it's like I said, that's why it's all been weaponized against us to strip us of our wealth, to $39 trillion in debt. Where did that money go? Well, it went to a lot of those entities that are right there on that sheet, right? We gave, Obama gave billions of dollars to Iran. We have all these USAID grant making, features and foreign aid that we're not using to better the common man's money, but instead giving it to these 501c3s that are controlled by, leftists who hate us, a lot of times foreign interest, and they are not spreading American values abroad. They use our grants and our money that we send them to spread socialism, to spread sexual deviance and abroad. And it's an attack on our Christian values that our country was founded upon. And yeah, absolutely. As far as think about cereal, everyone was told that cereal is good for your heart. Well, there's actually no studies that have ever shown that. That's a marketing ploy. And so, all of these sorts of people have tried to strip us of our dignity, strip us of our health, and strip us of our wealth. And they're attacking us from all sides, not just foreign interests, but even sometimes our own civil government is doing it, or they're hiring 501c3s and taking our tax money in order to brainwash ourselves and our kids. And they know kids are the most vulnerable. And so that's where, as we exposed in our book, Woke and Weaponized, about 80% of the focus of Russia before the wall fell was to infiltrate our education system. And that's why they had guys like Mann and Dewey and really focusing on the teachers' colleges so that everyone who got a teaching degree would be educated in their collectivist ideology to undermine American exceptionalism so that we would be susceptible to these lies, and so that we would have a group of young people who can't think straight. That's why our education system keeps dumbing down results. You can look at a test from like 1898, and one-room schoolhouse 8th grade test is harder than most master's degrees final tests now. And we just waste people's time, and we spend a ton of money doing it.
It's crazy. Well, Peter Schweitzer, who's a friend of ours and has been on the show a couple of times, and a lot of people from the Government Accountability Institute have come on The Truth with us. He's written a new book that is very compelling called The Invisible Coup. And he basically says that, these migrations that came into the United States, they weren't organic. They were planned and paid for by people that want to infiltrate the United States. And it does seem that they want to diminish your power and my power and the great silent majority's power in America and give it to illegal immigrants.
No, absolutely. And they, specifically the Democrat Party at the moment, knows that they can't win on their arguments, and so they've imported voters. How is someone in Venezuela who's making $5 a day making a 3,000-mile trip to our border, right? I mean, where is that money coming from? Some of it's from our own tax dollars, where we're actually funding through Catholic charities them coming in here. But it's very strategic by our enemies. That's how you get sleeper cells in America. Who knows how many are here, but, those could be activated at any time. I absolutely believe that. I mean, you have all of these young male without their families coming here. Like if it was truly an asylum situation, why would you leave your wife and children behind if you were fleeing tyranny? It doesn't make any logical sense. And so, what they hope to do is, pass some sort of amnesty bill. They've already weaponized our census against us so that, a state like California should have like 5 less House members than it has today. But because they counted illegal immigrants in the last census and they've distributed tax dollars based on that and votes and House members and things like that, that's been weaponized against the American citizen in favor of a foreign entity. And so it's classic vote buying activity. And we have, a minority party in America who thinks every once in a while they're a majority, and to keep that majority, they're willing to sacrifice whoever they can at the altar of power. And so that's ultimately what we're seeing around the world or in the United States today.
Well, and it does seem like in the process of doing those things that they are attacking the very foundations of the American culture and society, religion, which we hold very near and dear to our hearts, private property rights, which you identify, and the family unit. Now, I keep asking myself, who could really be opposed to those things? Who could really oppose God? Who could really oppose the family? Who could really oppose the ability to own property? I mean, those are in everyone's best interest. So it seems more subversive to me and more designed to break us apart, fracture us. They favor the criminals more than the police. There's nothing about socialists that appeal to me. Not their ideology, not their tactics, not their violence, not their fascism. I mean, these are all things that every human being, I would think, would have a reflex action, a negative reflex, not just naturally to those sorts of things. I mean, do you like for people to boss you around and tell you what to do?
No, I don't, but they like doing it, and so they come up with clever marketing phrases that sell it to individuals.
Do people really want to be told they have to wear a mask? Do they really want to be told they can't congregate in their own homes at holidays? I mean, yet in New York, as you were talking about Mandami, the people that elected him are really begging for that kind of treatment that is going to come back onto them at some point. I mean, is it just P.T. Barnum was right that a sucker's born every minute? Is that the phenomenon that we're watching?
No, I mean, it's very tactical that they used our public school system to create really this mass psychosis ability from the multimedia and big business. And so they do it by what they call classroom management. And so they've basically taken the same tactics that you would use to train a dog and made it so that you could, train an individual child to be obedient, not to their families, not to God, but to whoever the government puts in an authority figure. And so it's taken many generations. Each generation forgets a little bit about what the previous generation knew before. And again, I think, basically America can't be taken over by a foreign entity. It can only be taken over from a failure within. And so how do you get a country to fail? Well, you destroy its moral fabric. You destroy, the family. You destroy these things. And the Bible tells us it's a spiritual battle, John. Mm-hmm. And so we're not battling against flesh and blood, but prince and principalities of this world. And so we know that the devil himself hates religion, hates God. He hates the family because, the family represents God's relationship with his creation, with you and I. And private property is something that God designed from the beginning. He gave Adam and Eve private property and told them to cultivate the world and to make it a better place. And so he hates when that's being done as well. And so he's always... did God really say? And always spreading lies. And there's plenty of people who are going to trade their soul for power. And, Jesus wins in the end, but we have to deal with the consequences of sin in the meantime. And as Christians and as believers, and we need to understand what it is, call it out and say, not my kids, not my community, and not my country.
So I've spent most of my career in sales. And the typical sales technique is you get people to talk about the problem that they're having, whatever context that's in, and we call that making them sick when they start talking about the inefficiencies in their office or the problems that they have with their current vendor. And then we make them well by showing how our product can solve those problems. Can you make us well, Robert? Because you've done a masterful job of making us sick. How do we rehabilitate our country and get it back on the rails?
Yeah, I mean, the honest truth is it's a grassroots effort. It's each individual family saying, not my kids, not my household, and taking self-sovereignty and rejecting socialist ideology in their house. And then it's pastors and it's business leaders who understand the dangers of this ideology, saying, we're going to preach from the pulpit the dangers of this. We're going to create scholarships. We're going to create private schools. We're going to make sure every kid in our church is getting a Christian education, whether it's homeschooling or a 3-day-a-week university model school or a Christian school. It takes business leaders saying, hey, I want my next generation of employees to be well educated. I'm going to create scholarships for my employees to send their kids and pull them out of public schools. Ultimately, it's about saving the next generation. Grandparents, right? Make sure that your kids aren't in public school. Be willing to pay for private school or help your parent, watch the kids at homeschooling them. It's not complicated, but it takes self-sacrifice, and they've created this ideology of greed and envy, which is the exact opposite of self-sacrifice. And so we have to throw off those chains and embrace what the good book tells us to do, which is, no longer steal and instead work so that we have something to give to our neighbors. And so it's not complicated. We have to stop outsourcing things that the government has no business doing for us and do it ourselves, even if we have to pay for it twice through taxation and by doing it the right way ourselves. But until we have people who are willing to step up and do those things, we're going to be continuing to go off the wrong track. And we're $39 trillion in debt. So the time to make these decisions, and maybe make a change and save our country, there's not much time left. There's a little bit of time to reverse it, but it takes people being patriots, people making self-sacrifice, and guess what? All those things lead to human flourishing. They lead to a much more fulfilling life than the hollow life of consumerism that is devouring our country.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think rather than waiting for somebody to swoop in and cure all of these things for us, that we each have an individual responsibility to do the lifting ourselves where we can. You and your wife, April, are certainly doing that and raising your 3 children. I commend you for that. My wife and I raised 3 boys who are now adult men, and we're very proud of them. But we did and make sure that they went to Sunday school every Sunday and then sat in church with us after Sunday school. So you can start there, and you can also start by helping recruit new members to come to the church with you. And I don't think there's anything more important right now than getting everybody out to vote in November of 2026, because 77 million Americans voted for Trump. We had a really phenomenal turnout, and we've got to do it again. And that opportunity is just right around the corner. We've got primaries coming up all across America, and then we've got the general election in November. And that could truly shape the future of our country. I can't not overestimate the importance of it enough to encourage people to get out and vote and get their friends, family, and parishioners to go with them.
Yeah, we get the government we deserve, and unfortunately, people have got to get out and vote. You can say you don't like this candidate or that candidate. I mean, just look at what's going on in Virginia, California, New York City, Minnesota. There's not 2 equal parties with an American dream that just have different ideas to get there. There's absolutely a Democrat Party right now who wants to create a socialist hellhole in the United States that they control and run over us Americans. And so, we got to get out and vote. We got to get our friends out and voting. But that's just a temporary measure. As you said, we got to get our families into churches. We got to create that as the center. The government caused these problems. So going asking the arsonists to go fix the fire is just dumb. So we've got to understand that the problem was we asked the government to do things that it has no business doing, and it becomes very costly and very ineffective. And so we have to bring back the American values of doing things ourselves in our community, holding each other responsible, and loving God. And ultimately, that's the solution.
I think that is a wonderful note to end on, and I really appreciate you coming on with us today. Robert Bortons, he's the author of Woke and Weaponized, How Karl Marx. Could we just wordsmith this a little bit? How Karl Marx won the battle for American education? How about we say how Karl Marx is winning the battle for American education? But that leaves the back door open for us to disrupt the plan. And I hope that we will. Just imparting my own 2 priorities for our country, very simply, are that we just eliminate fraud.
Yeah.
If we just eliminate fraud, I think we could really turn the ship. So what does that mean? It means fraud, waste, and abuse, dollars, obviously, but almost more importantly, eliminate voter fraud. Because if we don't have honest, free, fair elections in this country, we're reduced to a third world country, and we have no country, no republic moving forward. So, Robert, thank you for coming on, and I hope you'll come back again real soon, and have a good rest of your weekend.
Thanks, John.
Today's studio sponsor is Bone Frog Coffee. You know that. And if you're like me and you need a little extra bump during the middle of the day, just a little perfect kick without the jitters, grab Bone Frog Coffee. It's veteran owned. Talk about patriotism. It's veteran owned, founded by a retired Navy SEAL, Tim Cruikshank, as a tribute to his fallen teammates in the naval special warfare community. Each bag tells a story and gives a peek behind the curtain of special ops. If you don't already know, the bone frog is a sacred symbol for SEAL teams that represents those men and women who've given their lives in combat and are reminders to us of the ultimate sacrifices for our freedom and the American way of life. Every bag, premium, small batch roasted from top shelf Arabica beans. How'd I do, Anthony? Whew, finally. Smooth, low acid, and no robusted junk. Think bold blends like Frogman Dark Roast or the classic Bone Frog Medium. Tastes like freedom in a cup. And here's the real deal. A chunk of every sale goes straight to helping SEAL vets and Gold Star families, aiming for over $500,000 donated. Coffee with a cause. Yeah, that's not a slogan. It's brotherhood brewed daily. Head to bonefrogcoffee.com. Snag yourself some K-Cups, whole bean, or merchandise. Use the promo code TRUTH. Start your day like I do. Fuel up, stay sharp, and remember, service before self. Support our veterans and thank Bone Frog Coffee for sponsoring our studio. And check them out. Check them out right now at www.bonefrogcoffee.com. That's www.bonefrogcoffee.com.
So joining me now is Shannon Joy. She is the host of Shannon Joy Radio. Keith Irwood, business preparedness expert and COO and founder of the Irwood Group. And John Gordon, pilot and radio host, The Truth with John Gordon. Thank you three for all being here with us today. John, I want to start with you. Americans are seeing these airport delays. They're seeing TSA shortages and travel disruptions. At the same time, headlines are dominated by this massive spending request for the war in Iran. Are these issues connected, or is Washington asking Americans to believe they are completely separate?
Well, I don't think they're really connected, frankly. I mean, the Democrats are trying to get their way and on the Save America Act and on other left-leaning causes, and so they're digging their feet in. And really the main objective is to deter ICE from deporting illegals in our country, because the Dems are convinced they can't win in the competition for ideas. So they resort to doing what they always do, gamesmanship, and they put the burden on the backs of the American people who are suffering while waiting to try and catch a flight. I think it's inexcusable. I think it's deplorable and avoidable.
John, I hear exactly what you're saying, but do you think Americans are really blaming when they're standing in line? Do you think they're either blaming Republicans or Democrats, or are they just blaming those in power, which at this point happens to be the Republicans, for this issue that's happening?
Well, that's the challenge, isn't it? And the Republicans are in power, but they are not all powerful. I mean, you know, do we want a king for a day, or do we want a democratic process? And so I do applaud President Trump for dipping into other sources of funding so that the people that work in the TSA who are there to keep our airways safe are able to eat, clothe their families, and pay their rent. And I think it's just inexcusable that the Dems are holding them hostage while they try and employ gamesmanship to get their way. I mean, the litmus test on all of these issues should be what is in the best interest of the American people,
John,
on a issue by issue basis.
John, you're correct in that.
What is it you want?
I think that you are absolutely correct on that. That's what the show's about. What is in the best interest of the American people? That's why we're asking these questions. And we're not doing it in a sugar-coated way. And some of those things even Republicans don't want to hear. You know, Keith, I've got to ask you, because you're right. In the recent times, there's now funding for the TSA agents just started this week. However, now they're saying that these funds are going to come possibly from healthcare expenditures. They're going to move over funding from looking at different Medicare, Medicaid issues in the country. This is a $200 billion request the Pentagon is putting in for war funding. you know, when I look at it, Keith, I have to ask you, it's naturally raises these questions about the priorities. How do you justify that level of spending abroad when basic systems at home, now looking at our own healthcare system, appear to be very strained?
Well, you're right. And I also want to say that I agree with John 100%. And I want to add that the shift in the funding and moving ICE is actually really good and has made a lot of positive impacts on the long lines. But I also want to point out that, you know, there's a shift of taking care of Americans, and the first job of government is for our American citizens' safety. During the time period that Biden was in office, a lot of millions, in fact, people crossed the border. We know that some of those were known terrorists and unknown terrorists. We don't really know how many came across. And this is at a time where the Democrats, because of the SAVE Act and because of their policies and beliefs on immigration, they're defunding DHS and TSA.
Right. But here's the thing that I find to be very interesting about it. Those are great talking points for the Democratic Party. That's nothing different. In fact, they have to push that they are going to defund DHS and they're going to have to defund ICE because that's what's going to get them elected. That goes very well. That's the red meat for their base. At the same time, Joy, we are talking about national security in terms of these military actions overseas. I think all of us can understand that national security is not just here at home. But airport security is literally frontline security here at home. Do you think Washington has lost sight of this balance between protecting Americans at home and projecting this power abroad when the first line of funding that they went after potentially to move over and to pay for this was the DHS and our TSA agents?
Yeah, no, the Trump administration, this current administration, does not have the American people's interests at heart. I think it's very clear that there are outside influences, that this government is prioritizing foreign interests, corporate interests, and cronies, even his own family, over the needs, the safety, the security, and the well-being of the American people. And that's why his approval ratings at this point are now in the 30s, right? The Americans are deeply, deeply opposed to actions in the Middle East. The polling is blatant. I mean, this is among independents, Republicans, and Democrats. And, you know, what we're seeing happening in airports, I think, is largely manufactured chaos and a manufactured crisis. The Trump administration doesn't have to go straight to TSA workers. I think the Trump administration would like to continue to normalize the militarization of the streets of the United States of America, first from what we saw in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and now what we're seeing happen in airports across the United States of America. I think that the actions in the Iran war are in the interest of no Americans. In fact, they're making American life harder in every conceivable way, with the closure of the Strait of Hormuz and the energy shocks coming across the globe. I think that we are seeing them try to normalize a difficulty in transportation for U.S. citizens. I think we'll start to see more chaos in airports. If we see gas or if we see oil go to above $200 per barrel, which we are seeing reports of that now, every single American is going to pay more for every single item. It's going to cost more to ship items. We're going to have long-term impact in this country to no benefit for any American. And this is why Americans are angry. And I think that conservatives need to take a hard look at what this administration is doing. We also have an economic crisis that we are facing, inflation. And so in terms of what's happening at the airports, I think the larger concern for many people is new rhetoric around energy shocks and energy lockdowns. And so this is reminiscent
Can we stop
for
the
me
filibuster
of the
long enough
COVID
to
crisis
unpack what
where they
this
locked
lady's
down
saying?
Americans, essential versus non-essential, created the crisis so that they could expand their power and authority and continue to tear apart our Constitution. And by the way, the role of the president is not to keep Americans safe.
And I get
the
that.
role of the president in our government is to uphold the Constitution and to protect our liberties. And that includes free markets. And this
Shannon,
president, this
Okay.
administration is
Hold on,
not
Shannon,
doing it.
Shannon,
Biden
Are you
too.
gonna,
but
how long are you going to let
pause
this
this.
rant go?
I am. Well, let me say this. First of all, I want to establish, because obviously we're coming at all different perspectives on here. That's why we're having the three of you on in this. I think we can all agree, though, on one thing, that the American people aren't happy. Joey points out a very good point. The polls are down, but President Trump, I don't think he necessarily sees that, knows that, because in MAGA world, according to those MAGA polls, he's just as popular as he's always been.
That's right.
And that's where I think the only poll Trump's seeing. At the same time, to your point, John, and I want to give you a chance to respond to this real quick, because I do want her frustrations is true. Now, let me guess, Joy, you were never a Trump supporter, correct?
I'm a lifelong conservative Republican. I voted Republican for 35 years. I started a radio show 12 years ago and have always upheld principles of conservatism, free markets, the Constitution, and the role of government. Trump is not a conservative, has never been a Republican, and that's why I've opposed him. His policies are more reminiscent of Democrats than they are of Republicans. That's just
Joy,
my thoughts on
I
it.
get what you're saying. So, John, I want you to respond, because to a certain extent, she does say she's a conservative, and this is where I think conservatives they're not listening. They're not listening to the ones that are not happy with what's going on. So, John, how do you respond? And I promise you, Keith, you're going to lead off in this when we come back. John, what is your response to those conservatives who are frustrated, like Joy right now, with policies that they don't feel like are really following the conservative principles and the promises that Trump made on the campaign trail to get reelected by conservatives?
Well, first of all, I don't believe that any president should govern the country based on the polls. Now, they want to get reelected, and so the polls are important from that standpoint. But I don't know how old this young lady is that is talking, but I would just curious if she was alive in 1978. I was, when the Iranians seized our U.S. embassy in Tehran and held 54 U.S. citizens hostage for over 2 years. And they have terrorized the world and this country ever since. I commend President Trump for having the guts and the determination to stop their tyranny and their killing of their own people. 30,000 people have been killed by the Ayatollah. Are you kidding me? And you're more interested in polls than you are the sanctity of human life?
Yeah.
I mean, come on, get real.
Well, John, John, let me point out something. You're going back 40 years, though.
Be stopped.
You're having to go. You're going back 40 years, and that's really hard for this next generation.
No, it's 40 years of constant terrorism.
But it's 40 years
sponsored
today.
Terrorism around the world.
And I understand what you're saying. So
death to America.
Let's do a quick break, because we're going to recenter here, and we're going to go back to our focus on this, because these are definitely real issues. We're not going to ignore. These are the arguments happening amongst the conservative movements right now. Donald Trump's own supporters in the party right now, and we cannot ignore them. That's when the Republicans are going to lose, when they don't listen to what people are saying. We need to know, what does America First foreign policy actually look like? Has something shifted from what Donald Trump promised on the campaign trail when he said no new foreign wars, or is this just him playing 5D chess and finishing something that no other president had the courage to do? We'll talk about this some more after the break. Welcome back to America First. Tonight we're examining the growing disconnect between domestic challenges like airport chaos and massive foreign policy spending tied to the war in Iran. A conversation really happening on the Republican side. In fact, I find it hilarious that Democrats are kind of sitting back in all of this and just watching the Republicans have this argument amongst themselves, hoping that they just stay at home. Shannon Joy, I apologize, I've been calling you Joy. It's such a great name. Okay. Shannon, thank you so much for joining us. She's the host of Shannon Joy Radio. Keith Irwood, business preparedness expert and COO and founder of the Irwood Group. And John Gordon, pilot, radio host, The Truth with John Gordon. Welcome back, all of you. I told you, Keith, we're going to get back right in with you on this one. This America First doctrine, something that got Donald Trump elected in 2016, again in 2024. It's always emphasized prioritizing American citizens. Donald Trump's core issue, American infrastructure, American stability, Based on what you have seen, on what we're seeing right now, do you feel like this current foreign policy is aligned with that principle, or can you see why some of his biggest supporters are a little frustrated with this policy right now?
Well, first, let me start by saying I do see why many people are frustrated. When you look at it on the surface, it doesn't necessarily look like an America First policy to go start a foreign war with Iran. And Shannon, she made some really good points, but here's where I'm at. And we've essentially been at war for 47 years with Iran. I wrote back in 2013 that a major conflict or war with Iran is basically inevitable. With them heading towards doing nuclear research, enriching uranium, they obviously have ballistic capabilities far beyond what they admitted after launching a missile on Diego Garcia. That actually comes first, in my opinion, because they've been actually attacking us for a long time. And I was a young boy in 1978. And I actually watched my dad struggle with the oil lines, the every other day, or every other, where you have to wait in these long, long lines, fights break out. And if we end up in a protracted war and it goes beyond the end of April, which is possible, that we're definitely looking at a future of not only high increased oil prices, but we already have bigger problems with increased or shortages of urea, shortages of helium, which are all natural gas byproducts.
Right.
So I do believe and support the president, although I don't agree with everything, obviously, but I do agree with the current attack, and the timing on Iran, I think, was good and timely. And with Iran
right,
assassinating tens of thousands, the actual number is really unknown, but it's estimated between 30 to 40,000 of their own citizens in the protests the last couple months, and they're still executing people. So I think it was a good thing.
And I get what you're saying on this one, and I want to take this to John real quick before I go to you, Shannon. Do you see, though, are you worried that, as you said, if this continues, and they're saying it's costing families on average $10 to $15 more per filling up their gas tank. Most people have 4 cars, 2 to 4 cars they're filling up. It is going to have an economic. It's more than just, per se, giving up a Starbucks. Are you worried that this is going to have a political backlash to President Trump when he gets to the midterms? And we're just a few months away from that, John. Or do you think that the Republicans are still going to come out overwhelmingly for these candidates when it comes to November?
Well, I put my first bumper sticker on for Richard Nixon in 1959. So I've been a consistent Republican my entire life. There is a political reality that you point out. And I have said on my own radio show as late as Saturday of this past week that wars are easy to start and very hard to end. And I think that's what President Trump is experiencing right now. I think he thought that if we kill all the leadership and we take out their missile capability, that they would fold, and they haven't. But let's get back to my original point. Since 1979, they have sponsored terrorism around the world. They have sponsored Hezbollah for the last 50 years. In 1983, they were responsible for the Beirut bombings. In 92, they were responsible for the Israeli embassy in Buenos Aires being attacked. In 94, the AMIA Jewish Center in Argentina. It just goes on and on. And so, I've lost 20% of my savings in the last month as a result of this war. Okay. Am I complaining? Am I having a pity party? No, I'm not. It is a sacrifice I'm willing to make for our country's security and the world's security, and to do the right thing, which is to neutralize this threat to democracy and the Western world. These people shout. death to America. And they have engaged in terrorism. It is high time that someone's had the courage to stand up to it. Thank you, President Donald J.
John,
Trump.
and I see your point to that. Shannon, I'm going to go to you real quick.
Yeah.
My only response that I'd have to point out to that, there's been lots of countries, unfortunately, that shout death to America in the streets. There's been lots of other countries that have terrorism. I mean, let's look at it. Let's go, we were in Afghanistan. They justified Afghanistan for 20 years in that. And we saw how many American lives did with that.
So would you just ignore it? Would you allow the killing of 30,000 people to continue?
Absolutely.
Would you allow the attacks on our military bases to continue? 600 U.S. servicemen and women have died.
I don't
at the
think
hand
that
of
people...
No
I
one
don't think
cares
that
about
people
that.
realize that they were
No one
about
cares
to
about that.
acquire a nuclear
Well,
weapon.
you'd care if
and
it was
have
one of your
ballistic
relatives.
missiles.
Well, but
if it was one of your if it was your family service member that died at the hand of the Iranian regime, you would care.
Well,
I care, and I've never met any.
Enough Americans have died at the hands of our government and our governments over the past 10 years, particularly since the lockdowns of COVID in 2020, at the hands of government intervention.
Let's don't confuse the issue. I mean, we can talk about Democrats imprisoning legions of people for marijuana possession.
How do you explain Donald Trump made it the hallmark?
Hold on one second, John. Shannon, go for it.
Yeah.
Make your quick point.
Well, I would say two things to John. The list that he rattled off, I mean, that list was evident and available for the, years that Donald Trump campaigned on ending endless wars. Donald Trump was very clear that he was not going to start new wars. He was going to end the wars that had been previously started. So this is a complete and utter blatant betrayal of his constituency base. Nothing has changed. They have not made any case to prove that there is enrichment of uranium happening. They have openly acknowledged, actually, that the U.S. has destroyed all of their ability to enrich uranium. That was announced just a couple months ago. There's no evidence of any nuclear proliferation, and there's no evidence that Iran posed a direct threat to the United States of America. In fact, the Trump administration is saying that we're waging these wars for resources, for trade routes, to commit regime change. I mean, they're giving every excuse to go to war with Iran, except for Iran is actually posing a direct and imminent threat to the United States of America. And it's so bad that even Israel just came out yesterday and said they're not sending any troops. So we're going to send our troops ahead. This is a war to benefit the government of Israel. We started this war because, Trump said that there was an imminent, Israel was going to come in and attack, and we wanted to get there first, which is an insane reason. I mean, even the administration cannot get their story straight as to why we are sending now 57,000 troops, boots on the ground, into Iran. Their messaging is completely contradictory to the extent that they're gaslighting the Americans with the absurdity. It's utterly absurd.
And let me ask you this.
The second point, you mentioned your 401k, and you said, you're willing to lose 20% of your retirement to wage this war. You're willing to put, our children on the line. I have 3 children. I have 2 boys, okay? And I'm not willing to put my children on the line for this war, but you're willing to give up 20% of your retirement. Do you know how much the Trump administration and the Trump family has increased their net worth in just the past 12 months? Well, $4 billion.
I don't see the connection. We're talking about a war in Iran, not the Trump family wealth.
So sacrifice.
I mean, be real.
While he enriches his own cronies.
Okay, so let's take that side. Let's take that. And I hear what you're saying, Shannon. I mean, real quick, I want to give you, John. Here's the thing. You mentioned history, and you talked about how the 1970s, and I agree. I've heard stories. I definitely realized there was an issue there. But since then, for the people that were asking potentially to go fight boots on the ground, they learned those stories from a history book. But since then, we did learn that in Iraq that we as Americans were duped and lied to get our soldiers into Iraq. And I was one of those that went over there. We did learn that we were told a lie by our government, the reasons that we were there, by our politicians. I think you have to admit that one of the big heartaches in all this is Trump promised. Now, if Jeb Bush would have got up there and said, I'm going to go in Iran, we'd go, yep, we expect that to happen. And if we elected him, we knew it was coming. I just don't think his own base, conservatives, independents that voted for him, thought that he would do this because he specifically, and J.D. Vance and even Marco Rubio specifically said this was not going to be what they did. In fact, they said if you wanted this war, you elect the other side, you elect the Democrat. Can you at least kind of say, can you see where that perspective is coming from?
Of course, but are you so naive as to believe that things are not dynamic, that things are not subject to change? Now, President Trump,
What
Marco
changed?
Rubio,
Tell me what changed in the last year. Tell me what changed in the last year on it.
I will, absolutely, I will, if you'll allow me to. J.D. Vance, Lindsey Graham have all said that Iran possessed uranium, that they had refined it to 60%, that it was a steep curve to get to 60%. But the curve from 60% to 90% was pretty easy, and that they were really genuinely concerned about allowing this state that sponsors terrorism around the world to get their hands on a nuclear weapon. I'm willing to accept them at their word. Evidently, you all are not. You can have your own opinion, but...
Well,
trust me,
yeah,
bro.
he's the United States Senator from South Carolina.
I understand completely why people don't want to take him
you don't
at
like
his word,
Lindsey Graham. Okay,
because the
so you
government-
think he's lying.
So let's
you
pause.
Think
Present
yes,
the evidence.
that Lindsey Graham is lying.
We will say, I think at three, at least I will say, I think Lindsey Graham, while he's at Disney World, by the way, currently at Disney World this week, having Chef Mickey, yeah, I do think Lindsey Graham, because he's lied to us in the past. Okay, so at the heart of this conversation is something very simple. It's priorities. You know, America First was never just about rhetoric. It was about focus and action. Focus on the American worker, the American traveler, the American taxpayer, and the idea that this government's first responsibility is always supposed to be to its own people. When Americans see this chaos at airports, when they feel the strain in their daily lives, especially when they go fill up their tanks, then they hear about the hundreds of billions of dollars being requested for another foreign war. They don't need a policy briefing to understand that something just doesn't feel right. The math is not adding up because priorities don't lie, budgets don't lie, and the actions by your government never lies. The question now is whether Washington is willing to be honest about what they're actually doing and what their motivation is. Are they going to realign their priorities or continue down this path that leaves Americans asking the question, who exactly is being put first? Thank you for watching. I'm Skynell Hughes. This has been America First.